How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video, of course, we're going to talk about the next few snowstorms that are going to move through the Midwest, the Northeast, and potentially the Southeast, to where many areas, probably 1/3 of the United States, will at least experience some sort of snowfall accumulation from these next few winter storms moving through. But first, let's take a look at the current radar, and the current disturbance we're taking a look at right now is this trough coming off the Pacific Northwest coast at this time. It's bringing some snowfall to the higher elevations of California and into Nevada as well, and we're also seeing some isolated snow showers throughout Utah as well as Colorado. But this disturbance will be our next major winter storm for the Midwest that could dump feet of snow, where areas like Chicago as well as Detroit could experience over 6 inches of snow. More likely, Chicago will experience close to a foot of snow, if not slightly over a foot of snow, as this disturbance is going to come with a lot of cold air behind it. That's, of course, going to interact with this very warm air mass in the southeast. That's going to allow this storm to rapidly intensify as it continues to head further eastward. We also have another small disturbance that's currently located over the Midwest at this time frame. That's bringing a large area of light snowfall over Iowa, extending into the Chicago metropolitan area. I wouldn't expect anything more than an inch of snow, maybe over an inch if you're lucky, if you do want the snowfall in these areas, but not much more than an inch, I'll say, at most in these areas, as this trough is very weak. However, it will help bring down the cold air for the Midwest, for many areas throughout the Midwest to experience entirely a snow event like Chicago, because this trough will enhance the northwesterly flow along the western side of the trough, and that'll bring the cooler air further southward to create more of an unstable environment and allow the temperature to be cold enough for many of these areas to receive snowfall from our more significant winter storm that's gonna be on the horizon by the time we approach this weekend. However, that's not our only winter storm we're worried about in the Midwest. We are also taking a look at a snowstorm that's in the more long-term future, which could bring major snowfall right up along the northeast coast if we were to continue to move forward with forecasts. Of course, we have this current Midwest snowstorm that's expected to move through right around the Friday to Saturday time frame, but behind it, we're going to see another trough come off the Pacific Northwest coast that could bring major snowfall to the northeast, and not just the interior northeast like we've been seeing over the past few winter storms, but this could bring major snowfall to the more coastal areas of the Northeast, like New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Boston, all experience entirely a snow event, as I'm more confident that if this snowstorm were to occur for the Northeast, it'll most likely be a snow event for the coastal Northeast. I find it a little bit less likely in a scenario like this that this low pressure system will move close enough to a coast to where maybe the Interstate 95 corridor cities experience a little bit of mixing with rainfall intrusion. I find that less likely at this point. I think the northwesterly winds will be strong enough to keep this storm system far to the southeast enough to allow the cold air to dominate the coastal cities for this to entirely be a snow event. So the only way you wouldn't experience a major snowstorm for the bigger cities is if this storm system doesn't strengthen as fast as anticipated, which is still certainly a possibility, because if we were to take a look at the GFS model, the GFS model isn't as confident as strengthening this storm system as fast, which means that the northeast cities experience far less snowfall if they receive any at all in a scenario like that. So if we were to take a look at the latest run of the GFS model, you're clearly going to see that the GFS model isn't as confident that this storm system will strengthen as quickly, and it's mainly due to the fact that there just isn't enough instability initially for this storm system to intensify as quickly, for this storm system to be anything major by the time it approaches the northeast cities. We're definitely going to need to see a jet stream dip that's pronounced enough to enhance the instability, which will enhance the lift and convective activity of this storm system, for me to be more confident that we're going to see a major snowstorm for the Northeast, you still do experience at least a little bit of snowfall in this scenario, but definitely nowhere near as much as what the European model is currently forecasting. So I'll keep you guys updated. Really all depends on how far south this jet stream dips, and that depends actually on how strong this storm will be by the time this approaches eastern Canada, because the stronger the storm is, the stronger the northwesterly winds will be, which means that more cold air would move further southward, and that'll force a more pronounced jet stream dip to develop to enhance the instability. So it's this huge butterfly effect that is going to need to be required for a major snowstorm to impact the more populated areas of Northeast, and it's certainly a possibility. I will say that at least somewhere around the Northeast and potentially the Southeast as well will experience some snowfall. I actually will say I do believe that these areas in the Southeast will likely experience snowfall, because this won't necessarily require a very pronounced jet stream dip to produce snowfall in these areas. It seems likely that even with there's going to be enough instability with this storm system to dump a heavy amount of snowfall throughout the Rocky Mountain ranges, extending into portions of the northern Southeast like Oklahoma, Arkansas, southern Missouri could get involved with heavier snowfall, and same goes for Tennessee, and potentially as far south as northern Mississippi as well could get involved. I'm a bit more confident that that's going to occur, and with a snow area like this, you should expect around 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. It does become more uncertain beyond that point, because once this storm system approaches the Northeast, it's going to lose a lot of its initial strength it produced once as it approached the Pacific Northwest coast by this time period. So it's going to definitely need some more fuel added to the fire, and the fire in this case would be the low pressure system for this to re-intensify once more, for this to become a major snowfall threat for the Northeast. And it also depends on the amount of ridging just to the east of it, because there's still a possibility that maybe this moves a little bit too far off the coast to bring major snowfall to the Northeast. So still a lot of factors to iron out, but I will say I'm a bit more confident than not that we're at least going to see some snowfall in the Northeast. It really just depends on how much snowfall, and if this could be a major snowstorm for the Northeast coast. I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we get a better idea of how the forecast will play out. But moving back a little bit further, more towards the short-term future, let's talk about this Midwest snowstorm. So with this Midwest snowstorm, the certainty is very high at this point. Both the GFS and the European model are taking nearly an exactly identical trajectory as well as strength of this storm system. So in a lot of these areas, you should expect major snowfall. Expect a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snowfall throughout Iowa, northern Illinois, extending into southern Wisconsin, and pretty much the entirety of Michigan should expect a pretty significant snowstorm, where you should expect anywhere between 6 to 12 inches of snow in those areas. If we were to take a look at the current snowfall forecasts from the GFS model for this storm system, we even have the GFS model in this scenario expecting over a foot of snow, which I definitely wouldn't rule out of that happening. We see in Chicago, you should expect, I'll say, close to a foot of snow. Remember, this is assuming that 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snowfall. That isn't always the ratio, like I've been saying over the past few snowstorm videos, so it should be slightly lower than what you see right here, but nevertheless, I do still expect a relatively large area of over a foot of snowfall for northern Illinois, extending into central and northern Michigan, and potentially southern Wisconsin could get involved with over a foot of snow depending on how far north the snow bands move. And for northern Indiana as well, you could get involved with maybe close to a foot or of snow or more than that. And then for other areas like Iowa, it seems less likely that the heaviest snowfall will move towards Iowa, but nevertheless, this should still be a major snowstorm for you guys, you should expect, at least in the southeastern portion of the state, right around 6 to 10 inches of snowfall. In the northwestern portion, you should expect less than that, closer to maybe 3 to 6 inches, so potentially 1 to 3 in the extreme northeastern portions of Iowa, so definitely be prepared for that. For southeast Minnesota, you should expect maybe 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, but it's going to be a fairly close forecast, because if this were to move just to the southeast of you guys, just around 20 miles to the southeast, at least the storm's trajectory, then that could play a role in determining whether you experience maybe 6 inches of snow to only 4, not even 4, probably 2 inches of snow if we were to see a shift in the forecast. That brings the storm system around 30 miles to the south and east, so you definitely need to be aware of that if you're right on the edge of experiencing heavy snow or no snow at all, because the forecast is more uncertain in those areas like in southeast Minnesota, as well as the northwestern portion of Wisconsin. And then for other areas like Nebraska and Kansas, you should expect a pretty large area of 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. And then for the other areas like the interior northeast, if you're right up along the Great Lakes, that's where you should expect the worst snowfall. And then when it comes to the second snowstorm that's expected to move through the southeast and northeast, I almost forgot to mention, in the GFS model scenario, we clearly see that the GFS model isn't very confident that there's going to be much snowfall in the mid-Atlantic, only around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall. And for areas like New York City and New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, you experience barely any snowfall in a scenario like this. But if we were to take a look at the European model, on the flip side, the European model is much more confident of bringing a major snowstorm to the northeast. You probably saw in the thumbnail of this video, the European model is currently expecting a pretty large area of 6 to 12 inches over all the major cities of the northeast, such as Boston, Hartford, extending into New York City as well. You would experience around 7 inches of snow in this scenario, as well as Philadelphia. So there's still a lot of time to iron out the forecast for the northeast coast, but I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we get more changes with the forecast, which definitely will happen because we're still right around 6 days out from this event occurring. And by the way, this would occur right around the Wednesday to pretty much the entirety of Wednesday. It should that's when the worst of the impact should move through the northeast. But for the southeast, in Oklahoma and Arkansas, you should expect impacts between Monday and Tuesday. That's where you should expect the worst of the snowfall. And then Wednesday for the northeast. So definitely be prepared for that, or at least be aware of that in the northeast, just in case a major snowstorm does impact those areas. So here's my current forecast for the entirety of the Midwest, Northeast, and even portions of the Southeast. So this is expected to bring, this snowstorm pattern we're seeing is expected to bring snowfall to at least 1/3 of the U.S. population, which is a large area that's expected to get impacted. So we do see, I'm expecting over a foot of snow in Chicago, pretty much exactly identical to what the European model is currently stating. I do believe the European model is a slightly more reliable model in a scenario like this, but the GFS model we can't disregard either. So definitely stay tuned for more updates over the next few days. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.